Welcome to the Backlot 605 podcast. I am your host. I am Casey Kelderman. Joined with me is Brian Mensing.
How's it going?
I'm doing great, Brian, and today we are joined by a couple guests on this show. They are the creative force behind the latest film, Loon Lake. We are joined by writer and star Nathan Wilson and the writer and director Ansel Faraj. How you guys doing?
Hey guys, we're doing great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving us a call. You guys are out in Los Angeles right now, and yeah, just thank you so much for just joining us. First of all,
yeah, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us on here. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Loon Lake is the film we are going to be talking about today, and I want to just start off with one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you guys, because this is a homegrown movie. This is about a local legend in southwest Minnesota, which is just across the border from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where we're from. Can you tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes of it and where this idea of Loon Lake came from?
I mean, it came from me growing up in that area. I grew up in a small town of Round Lake, Minnesota, which is by Worthington, Minnesota. And I remember going out there a couple times as a kid to the actual cemetery where supposedly the witch is buried. So it kind of stemmed from there, and me and Ansel shot a low-budget movie about 9 years ago. Yeah. And after the movie, I was kind of talking about it and kind of that I'd like to do it, I guess. And then from there, we got done writing a script, and I was like, what if we dived into this Loon Lake like witch story that I've been talking about forever? And so we kind of stemmed from there. I went out there when I was a kid, walked out, through the hayfield out to this old cemetery that is super creepy. And when you walk around in there, like, I swear, like, the temperature changes and, like, the wind stops, or, it's weird stuff kind of seems to happen when you're out there. Like, to me, it did. So that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
For me, I really connected to this movie because I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and we also had a urban legend for that area as well, and it also involved a witch, ironically. But yeah, I felt really connected to that aspect of it. And for people listening, can you tell them a little bit about what the legend is and how that fully connects into your feature film, Loon Lake?
Well, supposedly what I grew up with was that if you went out to the cemetery and if you crossed over her grave 3 times, you would die an unconventional death. So you never knew if it was her that killed this person or not. And there's other people now hitting me up on Facebook that are sharing their stories with me about if you cross it 3 times and something else on your 18th birthday and some other different stuff. But the one that I grew up with was, if you cross her grave 3 times, she'll come for you and you'll die an unconventional death. So from there, we just kind of...
We took the legend and we evolved it and sort of reconfigured it into our own cinematic vision of how did this urban legend come to be, and what could be the truth behind it? Is there much truth? And the fact is, as with all legends, there was no witch buried out there. There is no Mary Jane the witch of Loon Lake. It was all invented by the guy who ran the bait shop down the road. Yes, also supposedly.
Yeah.
Once again, who knows?
And then we also came from that aspect of there are so many stories that are about this supposed witch and what happened to her, why she's there, where she did actually die, what is this all going on? So we took that aspect of the story and incorporated it into the screenplay.
Everyone's interpretations of what could have happened and who she could have been.
And is it real or not real?
Right.
Yeah, one movie, I don't know if this movie helped influence your film in any way, but for me it felt like Blair Witch Project meets The Shining in the way that, one, The Shining because of Nathan, your character, and the way he kind of presents himself throughout the film, but Blair Witch within the urban legend aspect and the townspeople coming up with all these stories that may or may not be true. Did those movies have an influence on this film at all?
I mean, certainly, being independent filmmakers, Blair Witch is kind of a tentpole film for all of us in independent filmmaking, of wanting to make something scary that will connect with an audience on such a huge level of this have actually been true, is this real? And The Shining is a an epic classic of horror. I think every horror filmmaker needs to at least review The Shining before they try to make their own film. I don't
thought about that movie too much while we were writing it or making it.
It was more like focused on just telling our own tale, and
but I really like that.
The Shining. I mean, hey, compared to The Shining, yeah.
I don't know if we really had any movies in mind.
Yeah, I mean, Nate's giving me a dirty look because I'm the resident movie geek that can tell you who made what film in 1927. But there's a couple films that I really love from the late 60s, early 70s that they're considered folk horror films. The Wicker Man being a very famous film. Witchfinder General with Vincent Price was probably the most influential on my side of filmmaking with Loon Lake, primarily in the sense of the landscape and haunted landscapes and horror emanating from the earth itself. And so if you really want to say what films were kind of in the back of our heads, maybe those only on my side.
Witchfinder General for Ansel.
Because I'm the only person that's ever seen this film.
Well, I've seen it now.
Because I made him watch it.
So, yeah.
Nathan, you grew up in Southwest Minnesota. How important do you think it was to bring the film back to its roots?
When we wrote it, and the whole time we were thinking was that I have to shoot it here. I have to shoot it where it happened. I have to, what I lived through when I was a kid and kind of walking out to that cemetery, you could remake it, but just to shoot it there was the only thing that we could do. And it meant so much to me to be in LA, because I've been out here a while now, and to write a movie and act in it and be able to bring it back to Round Lake and the surrounding area, make the biggest movie that I have made in my filmmaking career thus far. To use the people from that area was just amazing. Best experience of my life.
There was no real decision. It always meant to be shot in Minnesota. It's a Minnesota story. You cannot film this in Hollywood. You can't. The people, the feeling, it had to be Minnesota. So, and always we looked at it as part of the adventure. We get to go. We're used to shooting here in LA and running around in Los Angeles, but to go out and film in a real location and take advantage of all that the actual area would have to offer was just
and to shoot it in my hometown where I grew up and at my family's house, and we knew the corn was going to be where it was, so that's another reason why we needed to shoot it there. And at that time of year, it's because the corn was surrounding the house. And I remember growing up when I was younger, and I watched Children of the Corn, and the corn was surrounding the house like it did in the movie, and it freaked me out to no end because I thought they were going to come take my parents away from me. So it was just a great experience to shoot there and to use all my friends and family's locations and the people from that area that did such a great job in acting and helping out and the catering, and
everyone could not have been more welcoming and excited and hospitable, and it's such a contrast from Los Angeles, and where they could not care less. It was magic.
I want to jump off something that you mentioned, because you talk about the cornfield, and that's very a Midwest thing to include corn in your horror film. Which have you guys found that audiences here in the Midwest compared to those maybe in Los Angeles find the corn or the isolation of the woods? Do you find audiences in the Midwest find that scarier than audiences say in Los Angeles?
I don't think there's a difference. I think corn is scary. Cornfields are scary.
I think it's kind of the same at both. Because when we premiered it in Okoboji and showed it to everybody there, a lot of people's favorite shot was me going into the corn and the drone shot, and even in Los Angeles and other people see it. A lot of people call out when I get lost in the corn. I think it's just him being alone and seeing this cool corn surround him from such a high angle with the drone shot that it really, I think, affects a lot of people, and I think it's kind of the same in both.
It taps into something of what you just said: isolation, and you're alone, you're vulnerable, and you feel that you're being chased or watched or something is out to get you, and that's just an inherent primal fear that we all share. So I don't think it doesn't matter where you're watching it or where you come from. It's just
it's just
a
freaky,
communal feeling that you're gonna have.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to be out there.
So,
Yeah, that was kind of just a curiosity question because I mean the audiences I know here in South Dakota are corn's scary. If you get lost in the cornfield, that's a terrifying thing to happen.
And I think they do a pretty good job showing that too. How vast and how far out there he was. If people didn't realize it in the first little bit, like when I see Ashley out there, and then you see later, like, oh my God, how
it does not take much to get
there.
Yeah.
So,
that's a fantastic shot in the film, and that was probably my favorite shot throughout the film too. It perfectly encapsulates that isolation.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Shot of the film. Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. We just got there, and I was so excited that I wanted to run out there as far as I could into the corn where I grew up with on our farm.
And we only had the drone guy for an hour.
And then so I ran out there, like I was like, oh, they'll be able to find me, like they have a drone. So I just ran out there, and then they were yelling for me, I guess, for like 5 minutes before I'm like, what is going on? Why is the drone not coming to me? And it's kind of circling around. So then I walked back. I could hear him screaming, like, we were yelling for you for like 5 minutes. You can't just take off. I was like, oh, sorry. I'm so excited to start shooting. But so then I had to take the shovel and like put a glove on it so they could follow me through the corn, which is, now to think of it, that's how scary it is out there. If you don't know where you're at, you can definitely get lost out there and not hear anybody even screaming for you.
Oh, that's a great story. I love hearing that.
I'm just picturing the hand coming down the way.
Yeah, I have like this glove on the end of a spade, and Kelly, the other producer and girl that plays Mary Jane, is like standing on top of a Can-Am like roof, yelling my name, and I can't even hear. And then I see her like waving when on my way back. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, why don't you just come down here? We can't find you.
The next question I have is you guys were dealing. It's a small budget indie film, and there's going to be setbacks and limitations. But you guys, I'll commend this. You guys did a great job of not showing that it's an independent film or a smaller budget film, because it doesn't feel like that throughout the film, especially with like the drone shot. It doesn't feel like it's a small budget film. How did you go about setting yourself apart from what maybe other smaller films have made the mistake of in the past?
Let me just clarify something. You keep describing the film as a small budget film. It's not even that. It's a no budget film. We scraped everything together to make this film, and we were just very, very creative with our reasoning and with just the
money that we had. I guess was the best way to use it.
Yeah.
And I at first we wanted to get a red camera.
Yeah.
And then we realized that we didn't have enough money for that to get like some people to come down from Minneapolis to get a crew for that.
Yeah.
Was going to be too expensive. So then we had to cut back from there. And then we found this cinematographer from Minneapolis that came down, got a camera.
And then we were very creative with basically every aspect of it.
Yeah. So then
people that were.
Yep. So we shot it at my parents' house. A lot of locations that we used were on my family's like property that we like would make, the fire pit or make a cemetery or make this. The 1880s church, which took us a while to figure out. And I was back in Minnesota, kind of at my parents' house, like taking pictures of like where we could have the altar scene, where we could have the bonfire scene, where we could do this, and where the corn's going to look like, and these other spots that I've like kind of chose for locations, restaurants and stuff. And then we were like, how are we going to find an 1880 church? And we couldn't think of it. And then on my way back to fly out of Sioux Falls, I drove by Pioneer Village in Worthington. That's my grandfather, I think, moved some buildings because he was a building mover back in the day, and moved some buildings onto the property. And I looked over, and I was like, oh my God, I think we just found a church.
Yeah.
And then when I got to the airport, I looked at Pioneer Village, and then we found another building that was there. They were from 1800s. So then another time I went there to get a hold of the people to see if I could shoot a movie there. And one of the people that worked for Pioneer Village that's on the board was my English teacher where I grew up in Loon Lake. So I called her, got a hold of them, and they gave us a pretty good deal to shoot there. So it's just kind of a lot of people that I knew, small price for the locations or free locations.
And we've made other films before also with no money out here in LA. So we kind of have an idea of how to accomplish things and how to not cheat things, but how to
achieve things on a small budget. Ansel had some good ideas because he's a huge, late 60s, 50s, 70s indie film guy that he's watched all of the movies. So when he watches some of these movies, he realizes and sees how they shot this for no money, or how did they do this with no special effects,
with no computers,
computers back in the 60s, 70s. How did they do that to create this thing,
and then just apply it to what we can do today? And
what would you guys say was the hardest part of shooting? Because you do balance between present day and then you do the flashbacks to the 1800s. Was that something that was hard to find the balance between the two, or?
It's one scene is 1880s or 2018. It's part of the job. It's just another scene. But
I think that part was pretty much finding the church to be accommodating to note or to think that you're in that time period. I think would be the hardest for that stuff. But then the wardrobe, like Kelly and found a lot of great wardrobe that we used to kind of show that we're in this time period and to create that world.
We did a lot of prep work on that before we ever left for Minnesota and stuff.
I think we were so ready by the time we got there that we had everything that we were going to shoot for that day was all lined out. Thanks to Kelly, one of our producers that really kicked our butt in here with that stuff. So we knew what we were going to shoot this day. If we could shoot it this day, then we had another time period that we'd slot in.
Right.
So when we woke up every day, we knew
we had a plan.
Yeah, we had a plan.
Yeah, I think it is very important to have movies like Loon Lake where they tell stories that, that aren't otherwise going to be told. They're not going to, people from, Round Lake, Minnesota aren't going to have their story told by someone in, I don't want to diss Los Angeles, but that's the go-to place for films. And it's,
no studio is looking to go to Round Lake and shoot a film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how important was that aspect of it, of telling a story that it's not going to be told by anyone else besides you two guys?
Writing it, as we mentioned before, we always knew that it was going to be shot in Minnesota. It's a Minnesota story, but I think when we really got there and we are in the world that we've written, that we've been talking about for a year and a half.
For Ansel,
for me at least, I'm from LA.
Yeah, he's from LA, so he hasn't he hasn't been in Minnesota anywhere. So every time I just show him pictures and what everything's going to look like. So for him to...
And Kelly as well.
Yeah. And to, drive in from Omaha, or, because we drove up, and then to, bring them down the main street,
the way that Lewis
was going to come into town when we rolled in at night. Yeah. So their experience...
Here's the restaurant. Here's the water tower. Here's the graveyard. Here's Main Street. Here's the farmhouse. But I think when we got there and we started interacting with everybody and seeing what a huge phenomenon this kind of was for this small town, then it became more important to really do our best to get the flavor and the authentic. Not that we weren't going to get the authenticity, but really, really get as much of the real people and real world into the spirit of the film.
And I think while writing as well, we're going over the dialogue and going over the story and looking up stuff. I wanted to stay true as much as possible to what people have said and what are people's stories, what are not stories, and kind of hone that in. And we would do the dialogue for the bartenders and Bud and Gordy. We'd go over the dialogue. We didn't want it to be too cheesy, you know what I mean? But we wanted it to be true to Minnesota or Southwest Minnesota and true to that area, I guess. It really meant a lot to me to keep it as true as possible.
Yeah. Never hokey, never playing down to it.
I grew up in Northwest Iowa, which is very close to Southwest Minnesota, and I think they're very similar, of course, in landscape, but then in a small town community, they're also very similar. And I think you guys really nailed that the small town aspect, and like you said, the bar scene, the way like the old timers talk in a small town. That's how they talk. That's how they interact with maybe someone, from the city or whatever it may be. And I think you guys nailed that on the head for this film.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I just got a couple more questions for you. The first one I have: what's next for both of you guys? Maybe that's a trick question. I don't know.
Oh, this is a great one.
We're always writing. We've got like 5 other scripts that we've stashed away for a rainy money day.
Yeah.
But we're working on something pretty cool right now that we don't really want to discuss too much because it's still early stages. But it is cosmic horror, we could call that. And there are some familiar faces from Loon Lake that might be coming back.
Yeah.
And
very cool. I'm excited to see what you guys do next. I thoroughly enjoyed Loon Lake, and the last question I do have is: where can people find the film, and how can they help support you guys and the film?
Well, you can rent the film now on Amazon Video, Amazon Prime. It's Amazon. It's all one umbrella now. So Amazon Prime,
and that's for rent for $3.99.
Yeah,
and you can buy it for $10.99.
Yeah.
We'll get the DVDs and Blu-rays. Will be out there hopefully in January.
Yep.
I'm sure it's within January, so it'll probably be on Amazon Prime. Right now, it's on Google Play, Vudu, where you can rent it.
And it's going to be expanding to other platforms over the holidays and into winter before the Blu-ray release.
Yep. And another thing you can do to help us, if you see the film and you like it or don't like it or whatever, please write a review on Amazon and please rate us on IMDb.
Yeah.
That really helps us out a lot.
And we also have another film out there on Amazon Prime if you'd like, that's not as scary for all those people that can't handle horror films. We made a love story, takes place in Venice Beach. So the Midwest, you guys are getting cold right now. You can check out Venice Beach on our film.
Yeah, it's called Will and Liz. It's on Amazon Prime as well.
Yep, streaming for free.
Yep. We shot that film
in 2017. Yeah, 2017.
Yeah, so it's been out, I think, a little over a year now on Amazon Prime.
And then after we finished that, we started writing Loon Lake. So you can watch our progression.
Yeah, please.
And please review us.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. I found the movie on Tubi TV. I'll throw that one out there as well. That's where I found the film. But yeah, please go support the film and help these guys out in any way that they can. And thank you guys once again so much for being on. This was a lot of fun. And we'll talk again sometime soon. And maybe we'll talk about whatever you guys have coming out next once you can actually speak further about it.
Once they can actually tell us.
Yeah.
No problem. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We'll talk soon. Once again, we'd like to thank Nathan and Ansel for joining us on this podcast. This was a ton of fun. Once again, you guys can find the movie Loon Lake on Amazon Prime, Vudu, Google Play, and Tubi TV. Please go help support this film. We always like to have local guests on the show, and really go out, find this film, support it, leave a review, leave a comment for these guys, and this was a lot of fun to do. And once again, you can find the Backlot 605 podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us at backlot605.com, and you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and YouTube. And until next time, we'll see you on the Backlot of South Dakota.